Hey RC enthusiasts, RW down here in the shop, getting ready to clone my build for a client, and I thought this would be an awesome time to take a look at a stock right out of the box, never been run, Redcat RS10 XT compared to my modified version, and maybe see some of the similarities, some of the differences. Right away you're going to notice the different servo color. Well, those are Savox waterproof servos. These are Lansing servos. These servos will last you about a day and they'll burn out. You'll notice the blue battery. It's a LiPo 5000 milliamp hour Zippy 20C2S. This is a 7.2 volt nickel metal hydride 1800 milliamp hours. The difference is I can go out and run about an hour. You'll get about 20 good minutes. Power drops off differently between the two of them. You're going to notice these links and how the shocks mount to the links and how the shocks are mounted to the chassis. A very narrow configuration. Shocks are basically shadowed by the horns. These points all correspond. And look over here, you'll notice that these are mounted to the axle. My angle is wider, this angle is steeper. Obviously the two chassis are different. This uses the same electronics tray and the same electronics, and it uses the same battery tray. Different shocks, obviously. I'm not sure. I think these are Spark shocks. Titanium rods, aluminum bodies, rebuildable. These have aluminum caps. These are plastic. They're not bad shocks. I'm not saying they're terrible. To give you an idea, just while it's sitting here, push it down and watch how fast it comes up. Okay, drop it, watch how much it droops. A little bit of bounce there. The springs here, although they're really soft and flexible, they seem to be a little more springy, and there's a little bit less damping. Let me show you. Let me swap them around. We'll push this one down. An idea of how low it's going. Like I said, they're not terrible shocks, especially when they're brand new and the oil is still in them. I've beat the snot out of this rig today. 3 hours of bashing it, tumbling it, grinding it. You can see all the damage the unprotected body gets, which is why you might want to have something like a shell. A shell is not a bad thing. It protects your shock horns. When you land, it gives you a reason to roll over. Protects your servos to a certain degree. Not from bashing, but maybe from doing a hard flop. Servos took a real beating today, these servo horns. Broke one of them, had to replace it. So a totally unprotected rig like this, compared to something with a shell, completely different animal. You're going to beat stuff up, break stuff a lot more. Now, let me put the camera back just a little bit. I want to drop it, and I want you to see. Here's how low it goes, here's how high it goes. Drop it, and I get a mid-droop setup. That's from the adjustable shocks being nice and soft. Springs are just barely on the cups right there. Okay, now I'm going to drop this one. Okay, it's as high as it goes. This is as low as it goes. This is as high as it goes. And that's its mid-droop. That's about mid-droop for it. Okay? So here, these are just going to be relative readings, guys. These are not actual numbers because there's a gap between here and here, right? I could give you real numbers, but let's just get... So, at mid-droop, okay, 91, right? Okay. And over here at mid-droop, you can see already, keep my camera from flipping over, you can see already I have to drop it down just to be able to take a reading, and I'm at 75. So 91, 75, that's after it's just dropped. That's what it would be riding along with if it wasn't being disturbed by the terrain or elevation changes. Okay. So what's the maximum that this will come up? That's a valuable piece of information to compare to the other one. Again, just a relative figure, okay? So let's do two things. Let's get two numbers at once. Let's push it all the way down as far as it will go. So I'm starting to squish the tires a little bit. Okay? And I'm getting a reading right around 40, without putting too much strain on it, about 45. I don't know if you can read over my hand. 45, 46. I can push it down a little more, but it seems to be about 45. That's all the way down, and then all the way up. I want to get under the battery plate. Let's put the camera over here so you can see the number a little better. I hope. If not, I will tilt the camera up for you. So, at a maximum, we're at about, when I'm just starting to lift it off the ground, we're at 100. Okay. So, we're at about 100 at maximum up. So, we're going between 45 and 100. So, you're looking at a 55 millimeter suspension travel from full bottom out to full top out. That's a 55 millimeter extension travel. Okay, let's take a look at this baby. I'll get it a little more sideways so that you can see the numbers a little better. Okay, so what we were at, 70 around in there, 80 ride height. It's not been, when it's been flumped. So how low can we go? Let's squish it all the way down. I am down to 35, so I'm 10 lower than the other one. And at maximum, where I am fully up and I'm about to lift the vehicle up off the ground, I'm almost within 5 millimeters of the other one. I'm at 95. That's just full up. Okay. Right around 95. And it'll stay there. It'll sit up at 95 like that. You see, you got quite a bit of clearance there. That's my balled up fist. But drop it, let it settle, and all of a sudden that's a tight fit. And it's running lower, it's staying lower, but when it needs to, it can get the same amount of articulation. So where are we going from? 35 to 95. So I've got 60 millimeters of up and down travel compared to 55. You can change shock points around, you can change link points around, you can do a lot of things to this to get a lot more of the kind of ride character you want. It's completely adjustable in a lot of ways. There's certain conflicts that you're going to run into. Certain things you're going to have to worry about, shock rub. The reason they have these up here is so that you don't rub your thing. You start getting down to where the tire is. If you get more than about, I've found from setting mine, more than about an inch, you're going to, you can stretch it out, Did want to show you the wheelbase right now is very similar between the two of them. This is down at droop. Watch how the wheels change when I come up. At full rise, I'm about a half inch longer. When I push down, closer to an inch. With this also moves. At full down, we're both about a half inch. So we've got about a half inch difference in wheelbase. That's completely adjustable right here. Where you put this, where you put this, everything will affect what kind of articulation you can expect. This is, I think, pretty substantial. I mean, we don't have to go, you know, have an articulation measuring contest, I suppose, but just to show you, this is giant size drink thingy. It's perfectly happy up there, no problems. You can see how the suspension's working, really working a lot. You're really putting it to work. Let's try the same stunt. This thing, I have no doubt that this will have similar articulation, maybe even a lot more. See, look, it's even more. So right out of the box, got more articulation. Now, articulation is a wonderful thing. Don't get me wrong. I try to get as much articulation out of my setup as I can, but I want other characteristics. I want more compliance. I want lower center of gravity. I want more forward weight bias. And that's all just how you set it up. So, this, right out of the box, very capable, really fun. Things that you need to replace right away, or they'll annoy you. This, just a constant work in progress, learning as I go, trying to put the things I learn into practice. Long-time customer says, will you clone your red cat? So I worked it out for him. He went for it, and now we're doing it. So that's what this video is about, to start the process, okay? To start the process. And what I've got here is I've got shocks that are about 95. These are shocks that are about 100. And then over here, oh yeah, some more goodies arrived. 2-stage foams, LiPo alarm, CCBEC. Okay. But I've got these really, really long shocks here. So what I'm going to start out by doing is I'm going to see how these affect everything. My guess is they're going to affect everything in a really, really big way. They are really big shocks. As you can see, they want to come up that. So either I'm going to get a gigantic increase in ride height, which is one way to go, or I'm going to take my nice little template that I've got over here, okay, and I'm going to create a new template that has the horns coming up higher, which I think would be good anyway. If I brought these two 45-degree angles to a point, I think it would be exactly the right height for these shocks to work. And for lower shocks, it'll protect these horns. Man, oh man, that he's getting beat. That might look very cool, but actually, if this was bigger and knobbier, my shocks would be a lot more protected. As you can see, they've got the shocks well protected by the body posts here. If you're running bareback like this, it's a whole different animal. So, big old Venom shocks. That's the next thing I want to have to look at right now. And that's going to tell me in a very real and physical way what I got to do to make mods to this. Or, I also have another option. My other option is to build the Monarch. I built the Regent because the Regent was a low, long chassis which fits my Nomad really well. And it's what I'm going to put the Nomad shell back on this. I got holes for the body posts there and everything. So eventually I'm going to keep this chassis because I really like it. And I'm going to put my body post on it, put my Nomad back on it, and get back onto the Virginia Creeper Endless mod, Endless Tinkering. Right? But for this vehicle, with the big long shocks, I specifically designed this frame for the big long shocks. I think you can almost visualize it where the axles are going to be. If these are the 45 and this is your axle, you're getting that perfect ride height again, because you're gonna want about maximum up when everything's down, totally tweaked down. You're gonna want about 100. Seems to be a good starting point. Could be a little less. So the tires are 140. These tires are 140 in diameter. So you're talking 70. So you're going to want, from this point, which is about the center of your axle, you're going to want 30. So it looks to me like this is the chassis that I may have to build, instead of trying to take this one, which, as you can see, is a lot different. The reason I stretched these out more is because I was designed this one around 100 to 115 millimeter shocks. This could also use the 95 millimeter shocks right off of the Red Cat. So I wanted to build a chassis that you could just basically buy a Red Cat, buy this chassis, and completely convert using all of these parts, all the link parts, everything. Just completely convert it. But also wanted to test it out as a bareback crawler. But this is really the chassis I designed for the client clone. The Virginia Creeper clone. And I have a feeling that this will really do the job. And the way I can test this is before I get into all this intricate cutting work, which is not going to be fun. I can just make this basic outline, drill the holes, and test it. Do a test assembly with the big shocks and see how it works out. And if it works out, then I know what I'm going to be doing. I also wanted to point out a couple other little differences. Is that we're talking 130 millimeter links. These are straight links, they're all the same. 130, 130 front and back. And that does give you right in the ballpark if you have these about there, right? Get you in the ballpark for a 12-inch, 12.5-inch full extension wheelbase. I'm not sure why they bothered, because this is never, ever in its configuration going to be able to compete, because it's got rear axle steering is way too tall. It's going to tip over every time it turns around. So just, it's nice that they did that, but I don't understand why. They could have made it any size they wanted. I'm not competing. I just wanted to have a rig that did what I wanted. So I made long front links, short back links. I've got it usually set up where I've got more shock in the back than in the front, more stiffer, more upright shock. And that way, the front, the shocks lay down more, and they tend to act more. While the back one, what's happening is it's pushing on the opposing one, and it helps push that tire back down when I'm going over stuff. So that's what I was going for, just a whole different design. But in many ways, they have very similar characteristics. Mine will go a little bit lower, but it won't go quite as high. But they're very close to being within 5 millimeters of the same range. You can also see that I've altered where these uppers, the geometry of these uppers. And what that does is you'll see it really clocks the axle a lot. The further out of parallel you are, see right here, you'll see the axle is the servo is staying pretty close to in plane. It doesn't move around. Same here. Now that's wonderful. If you were driving a car down the road, you sure wouldn't want your axle clocking back and forth. But when you're crawling and climbing, that clocking is a good thing. It really is. If you have to be reaching up like this, you want your axle pulling back so that you're approaching the terrain with your best angle. And in the back, I like it clocked way back like that. It gets the motor up out of the way. I know this puts a little weight up high, but I've been dragging this motor on everything, and I do mean everything. Just dragging it, dragging. So, things to think about. What's actually getting hit? I'm really surprised. The motor is taking a beating. It is getting beat to snot. Even the gear case up here is taking a beating. Amazingly, the lipo, which is just covered in plastic coat, not so much. This great big skid plate, it poses some problems. You can get high-sided on something like a log. But as you can see, it really is taking a lot of the abuse. Nonetheless, from wriggling through all these little areas and doing all the crazy things I've been doing, you can see how abraded my links are. I've got more aluminum to make links, but I'm thinking maybe I'll break out the stainless steel once I figure it out and make links out of stainless. But I like the aluminum, especially for the uppers. It's so light. Seems plenty strong. It's held its bends. It hasn't pulled out. You can see the little mods that I've done to try and make things work better. You can see how this is set up. Every time you hit a rock, you're going to smash right into your servo horn. Bam, 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 bam. Every time you try and get over a rock, you're going to be dragging all of this, all the time. Which is why I put this up in the air. However, downside is, you're going to be slamming your servo into the dirt every time you tumble, every time you take a dive. And if you do as many dives as I do in one day, which is a lot, because I'm a noob, I don't know how to crawl, and I'm just trying it out, I'm just learning. So, yeah, smacking the servo horn, but this bent deal really helps. There's nothing to it. You can do that with your fingers, just about. These are the stock Red Cat links. Stock Red Cat axle, stock Red Cat electronics. HB Rovers make a gigantic difference. Obviously, that's not something I really pointed out, but you can put any kind of tires on any kind of vehicle. So, the things that are more specific, that are you can't just get off the shelf like a custom chassis like this. That's what I was focusing on. But yeah, you're going to want a better servo. You're going to want better tires. These rims have been cut down from 1.25 inches to 1 inch. Okay, these are 1.25 inch rims. They make the tire very square looking. These also are extremely hard tires. You could take the foams out of these and they'll work better. This is what the tire looks like after some abuse, right? It's a pretty darn good all-purpose trailing type tire. You'll notice that I cut out the little S-lugs. This is when I was first getting started looking for grip. Looking for grip, man. I was looking for grip. You can't get grip with something that's this hard. You can't. It doesn't matter what kind of foams. If you have no foams, the foams don't even factor into it hardly. It's just the ridiculous stiffness. Everywhere there's a lug, it's reinforced and it's super stiff. This, but on the other hand, this is like sexual in nature. This is so soft and yummy to squeeze and tweak. This, on the other hand, is very industrial. It's not sexual at all. So, and you can do all kinds of crazy things like I did. I spent a bunch of time and I star cut foams. Yay. Yes, I went there. It was 2014 and I'm star cutting foams. Right? These foams are not really good foams, I'll be honest with you. But hey, I wanted to take every step I could, and then I finally broke down and I bought good tires. Just like I bought a cheap servo, and then I bought another servo that was not that cheap, but pretty good servo, they said. And finally I just said, you know, this is what I want. I know this costs about half what two of these cost half what a Red Cat costs. These two servos alone would buy you half a Red Cat. But there's just something about having a decent metal geared waterproof servo that lets you do things without worrying. And you can waterproof this, you can do whatever you want to this. This thing is going to last you one day. It's going to burn out, strip out. What I have found is the actual motors and axles on these things are like pit bulls. They just keep on going. You can grind the crap out of them with the plastic gears. However, there are certain things that go bad on them. One of the things that you definitely gotta change out. Got it over here. These little babies right here. The little factory pieces of crap that they're grub screw, part pin, part grub screw that holds the drive cups to the center diff gear, the big spur gear, will shear off and just destroy everything. Turn to crap on you. So you get these and you replace them right away before it chews up everything inside your differential when it goes. Because this makes my client happy, and I suggested it, and he thought it was a good idea. These are the steel variant of what's inside the gear case. So I get to take that all apart, replace it all with steel. There are good bearings you can buy, ceramic bearings, but the cost of bearings is very high. I don't know, unless you bought like many of them at once, wholesale some way. If you just want to buy enough bearings to do a Red Cat, by the time you add up the cost of what ceramic bearings cost per piece, it gets very ridiculous right away. You spend more money than you may want. So we didn't go there. We're going to just work with the stock bearings. We're going to put in the steel gears. We're going to put in the pins. And here are identical tires to what I'm running. HB Rovers, Hot Body Rover, White Dot. Soft crawler tires. They look very strange right now. They look super wide and super square, kind of like the Red Cat tires. They're a little bit rounder, but they're basically very squared off and very odd looking. And what makes this tire so special is when you put the proper foam in it. And you can already see just by laying around like it is right now how my tire is getting flat. It's getting a flat spot in it. Just from laying there, just from sitting there. My rims have holes in them. Right? Hoping my foams aren't wet. I don't think they are. But as you can see, there's no flat spot at all on this tire. And with these factory foams in here, these tires look like old Sharpays. They're all baggy and weird looking. They have all weird wrinkles and dimples in them that just stay there. That dimple would just stay there. And when they get on a rock, they just bag up. So these stock foams don't do the job. You've got to have these ones that are just enormous. These giant foams. You think, why do I want to put a foam that's bigger than a tire inside a tire? And then try and compress everything on a 1-inch rim. This big fat 2-and-something-inch wide tire, it's a couple inches wide, 2 1/4 inches. And you're going to pinch it down into a nice little bagel. It's going to look like a little bagel on there. And then it really starts to perform. I would say one of the things that you need to do if you want to go the expensive tire route with the expensive foams that cost as much as the dang tires, you're going to have $80 or whatever in your tires. You might want to, if you've got some way of keeping your vehicle up on a soup can or coffee can or something to keep those tires off the ground, man, because those flat spots are not good. You let that thing sit overnight, you go riding the next morning, you got a little flat spot that takes a while to work itself out. This memory foam takes a while to forget. Got a little bit less room in here because I've got a ring of lead weights around the fronts. Sounds wet. I wouldn't be surprised. I go through every puddle I see. Alright guys, this is the beginning. This is where I do a lot of thinking, a lot of gyrating, a lot of coffee drinking. And we do a lot of unpackaging, and then we take stuff completely apart. Every nut and bolt, everything, axles, wheels, rims, frame, every little bit of this is coming apart. And then custom chassis, got a body to paint, body to put LEDs on, that hasn't even arrived yet. Got axle wideners, got a lot of little goodies that haven't showed up on the goodie table yet. Alright, stay tuned. Like, subscribe, and share.